All right, the Krug Show, our Monday shows moved to Tuesday. I filled in on KMBR on Mondays, so our Monday streams, we moved to Tuesday, which means it is Tuesday at 11. Well, 11:13 West Coast, 2:13 East Coast. We're on Kruger time. We're running behind, but Sam Batesh is in the house. We're talking QB rooms. Yes. What quarterbacks are going to be available to the Niners at the cutdown, which should be really interesting, and what do the 32 quarterback rooms look like? We will rank the top 5. We'll talk about the quarterbacks from a bunch of different angles. Join us. The Krug Show. Batesh is here. We're fired up. Let's go. All right, we're fired up. We're rolling on a Tuesday, 11:13 West Coast, 11:14 West Coast, 2:14 East Coast. Welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show, and Sam Batesh is here. If you're watching us live on YouTube, thank you, and do us a favor, smash the like button, hit subscribe, make sure you click the notification bell. Make sure it's turned on so you never have to miss a show. And remember, once the live stream wraps up, you can catch the full replay anywhere you get your podcast. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform is. Just search The Krug Show, and you'll find us. We've got a lot to get into today. So before we jump in, Sammy, of course, has his own channel. And it's linked here as well. And he's a great follow. He does a channel with Andrew Siciliano. Sammy, tell people about your channel and drive them to sign up. And if everybody could hit like and subscribe on both channels, that would be awesome. We'd appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Larry. Love doing this with you and getting our NFL content together at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam. That's where I host and co-host with Andrew Siciliano. We do the podcast that you can catch on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Thinking Out Loud, and the YouTube page at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam. You can catch all of our content there. And, of course, when I'm hanging out with Krug as well. So thanks. We love being on both channels. And, yes, please subscribe and like what we're putting together today. And I'm excited. Larry, you took me down a rabbit hole here, and we've got a good one today, man.
We do. We have a good one today. And what we're going to talk about is, this is the time of the year, okay? So there is no offseason in the NFL. It's a year-round deal. But if there is an offseason, it's between May 15th and July 15th, and it's July 8th. So we have 1 week, basically, before the rookies report. We have 1 week. This is the calm before the storm. And then when I say the storm, we're all going to be inundated, myself particularly inundated, with every Niner bit of news, practice, video, you name it. We'll be there full bore as soon as camp is underway. So we have a little downtime now. And so I was talking to Sammy, what do NFL people do during the downtime? Well, if you're John Lynch, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're probably hitting a beach. Take the family on a vacation. San Diego, Mexico, wherever you're going. Probably going to stay somewhat, close by, but you're still going to, it's vacation time. For a lot of the coaches, this is their family time. For some of the players who are stars, this is just, a little bit more family time, start to get that training dialed up. And then for the rank and file NFL player who's not guaranteed anything, it is go time. It is beyond the 4th of July, and you got, a couple of weeks to get in optimal condition so that you hit the ground running, ready to compete for that job that you seek come August. Because that's really what it is. Very few guarantees in the NFL. There's a lot of competition. So, and then there's the scouts, and that's me, right? I'm a former scout. And so what I like to do during the downtime is prepare to answer the questions that invariably are coming to scouts in August, which is, hey, we just lost a receiver. Who's the best receiver available? Who's going to be the best receiver cut when they pare the roster down to 53? We just lost a quarterback. We need a quarterback. Give us the landscape of the league at the, in pro personnel. This is what the Niner pro personnel people, this is what the Jaguar, Colts, Jets, Eagles, Packers, this is what their pro personnel guys are doing between minicamp and training camp.
And remember, Larry, I want to remind everyone out there. So you have done this before. You've been in this room, and so someone closes the door really quietly and looks around the room at the honest faces and says, all right, we have an issue here and we got to go get somebody. And remember, on your fantasy football team, when an injury happens and you go to the waiver wire and you're pissed because the names aren't amazing, imagine that. Those are pro players on rosters currently making plays, scoring touchdowns. Larry's talking about, before the season starts, grabbing the guys that nobody knows about, that other teams aren't interested in, not other fantasy managers, real, true NFL full rosters available. So this is in the weeds, finding out who's gonna be available before it even happens. So forget about, this is not asking, okay, we want to replace Mahomes with a starter, right? This is not replacing Mahomes with Kirk Cousins, essentially, or Rodgers, or whatever you might want to do on a fantasy football roster, right? This is the reality of getting somebody who actually would be available to play. So this is really in the trenches, and I love you that you went there and that you've done this before, Larry. You've had to do this. You had the pressure of having to come up with this list, and here we are doing it. I think it's great.
And it's, everybody, this, I'm not going to pretend this is this is everybody's list. This is just my list, right? I mean, everybody's got their own list of guys that they like, and not every scheme is looking for the same players. Some guys are looking, teams are looking for a pocket passer. Other guys are looking for a mobility element. Sometimes people are looking for a rookie that they can develop. Sometimes they're looking for somebody who's not a rookie, who's already developed and who, is a veteran and is ready to step in. To me, I always look at the quarterback room three ways. One, the very first question is, who's your starter and how good is he, right? Because that matters. Who's your starting quarterback? Do you have a great starting quarterback, and how good is he, and where is he in his career? Is he new? Is he young? Is he old? Is he on the end of his career? Where is he exactly in his career? But you got to have that number one. You got to have that starter, okay? Then you got to have a backup who can come in and play if that starter gets hurt in the middle of a game. Okay, so you got to have that piece. Some teams have a good starter, but they don't have a good backup. And then ultimately, if you're going to have a complete quarterback room, I think you need a good starter, a good backup, and a quarterback that could be a future starter, all on your depth chart. Out of your four guys, most teams are going to keep four. Some will keep three. Do you have a starter, a viable backup who can operate in a moment's notice, and do you have a long-range solution that's neither of those two guys at quarterback? So to me, if you have all three of those things, then you have a really great quarterback room. So let's go through the different quarterback rooms, and we'll first just kind of peruse the league, and then we will go back and we'll talk about the battles this summer. Which teams are kind of naked behind their starter? Because not everybody, if give you an example, if the Kansas City Chiefs lost Patrick Mahomes, he's the best quarterback going. Well, Andy Reid brought in Gardner Minshew this year. He also brought in Bailey Zappi, and they also have another young prospect named Chris Olave, who's got a lot of athletic ability. So in a lot of ways, Kansas City's got the best quarterback room, right? I think you get the best starter, but then you have a really good backup in Gardner Minshew, who's excellent at coming off the bench. And then you may have in either Bailey Zappi or Chris Olave, a young quarterback that you can groom. I don't know if I'd probably rank those young quarterbacks pretty low, but I'd obviously rank Mahomes the highest, and probably I would rank Minshew the highest.
Of course. Well, look at this. First of all, the weight on the starter in that situation, I mean, let's be clear. If we were just ranking heading into the season quarterback rooms, of course, you got to give a lot of weight to the starter. And Mahomes is going to get that many votes. What you're bringing up here that most people don't realize is that Andy Reid understands what you just went through in regards to what you may need in case of break glass, in case of emergency, right? The emergency being that all of a sudden Mahomes is not available, whether it's for one game, whether it's for 10 games. You mentioned two guys, Minshew and Zappi, have started games in this league. They have been tabbed at a moment's notice, you are our starter. Not you are starting this game. You are our starter, the franchise starter. Both guys have been given that opportunity. It happened in New England for Zappe, and with Minshew, we know that at one point Jacksonville thought he was the answer, and of course, Las Vegas, Oakland took that chance with him as well. We saw it with the Raiders also, and we know he can play. He can be at that level. Indy as well. Minshew can be that guy too. So that's a great situation. But even if it was just Oladikan and it was Mahomes, you would still almost say you could put Kansas City potentially as the best quarterback room because they've got the best quarterback in the league. And right now we're expecting that he goes 17 games. So Kansas City's at that level. The idea is this season, they're also more stacked than in recent memory in the backup spot. That's nice. That's a nice backup plan.
Well, and we'll go division by division. So we'll start in this division.
Yes.
AFC West. So the Kansas City's got Mahomes, Gardner Minshew, Bailey Zappi, Chris Oladikan. And then Denver's got a young starter in Bo Nix. They got a pretty decent backup, I think, in Jarrett Stidham.
Yep.
And then they have another kind of backup in Sam Ehlinger. The only thing Denver doesn't have is they don't have like a young long-term guy, but it's not that big a deal because Bo Nix is young in his own right? So
yeah, they're probably a little ahead of schedule even, right? Because what Knicks did last season was not necessarily expected. Certainly when you look at them as a playoff team, which is what they were, nobody saw Knicks. And when you really look at the numbers with Knicks is better than you remember. Denver didn't just land in the playoffs. This wasn't a mistake. They got there based on what Knicks gave them ahead of schedule. Maybe it wasn't ahead of schedule for those that were really inside those rooms in Denver, but we were not expecting that out of Bo Nix at this point in time. They're ahead of schedule in regards to their young quarterback being exactly who they need and knowing they have a franchise quarterback. They didn't know that 10 months ago, and now they do.
Yeah, so Bo Nix is the one. Stidham is a really solid number 2 with arm strength and mobility. And Ehlinger's kind of a gamer. You know, he doesn't really have NFL size or stature. Can't quite make all the throws, but he's a good quarterback, and he's got some experience. So Denver's in a good spot. Kansas City's in a good spot. The Raiders have Geno Smith, who they brought in from Seattle. They have Aiden O'Connell. They drafted Cam Miller out of North Dakota State. And they have Gus Bradley's kid, Carter Bradley, as number 4. And Bradley played at South Alabama. He's got a pretty strong arm. So that's the Raiders situation. I mean, Geno's the clear one, but then it's kind of open after that.
And they also had Aiden. Aiden was also in a quarterback battle. Remember that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, O'Connell's a guy who at one point won that job, lost that job, seemingly the future with Antonio Pierce at one point, and then it didn't happen, right? And for those that watched the series, receiver, right, Devontae Adams at one point was really liking what he was getting from Aiden O'Connell as well. So there's been moments for him also, and he probably still thinks he's got a shot at that job. He knows they paid Geno for a reason, but he's thinking in his mind that there's a competition. So that's more interesting than you're thinking. And Cam is more than one position, right? Doesn't Cam have the potential to do more than just quarterback?
I mean, he's a smaller guy. He's pretty athletic, but I mean, I think he's a quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah, he is. No, he is.
I don't know what other spot he would play besides quarterback. But I mean, to me, it's Geno's the one, and then you got 3 young quarterbacks who will probably fight it out to see who's 2 and 3, and somebody will probably get cut. And then the Chargers have Justin Herbert as a established starter. Then they have Taylor Heineke, who's an NFL starter, experienced number 2. He's your, hey, you know what? Herbert gets hurt in the middle of the game. We're going to somebody. It's Heineke. And then they brought in Trey Lance and the former Clemson star who transferred around, B.J. Ugalele. And those 2 guys are going to fight it out. It's going to be Trey Lance against B.J. Ugalele for that number 3 spot. And, hopefully Trey Lance can get it. But if I said rank the AFC West quarterbacks or teams by quarterback room, I would probably go Kansas City 1, and I would probably go with Chargers 2, because the Chargers do have, I think a solid starter, a solid backup, and 2 guys competing to be, long range backups or prospects, and two very talented, big-bodied guys.
You also can't help yourself that somewhere back in your 49ers brain, you're thinking, Trey Lance, like there's something about Trey Lance. Like everyone wants to think, because Trey Lance, the best spot we know for Trey Lance is to come in with no expectations at this point. We know what happens when he's in
a perfect spot.
Yeah, exactly.
He's in a perfect spot. They're going to run the ball a ton. You're in a running offense where all you got to do is make a few passes. That sounds very much like what Alex Smith walked into.
Yes.
And he turned his whole career around under Harbaugh. So I give Trey, first of all, just so you know, I don't know if you know this, but everybody had a stance on Trey Lance.
Yes.
My stance has never wavered. I always thought he was a good prospect, and I just don't think he has, I think he's really, really raw and needs time. But I still like him as a prospect. And I'm in the camp that says that Trey Lance is going to figure it out eventually. And I'm not in the group saying, he's a bust, he's never going to be good. I'm in that group that says he was a bust in San Francisco, he was a bust in Dallas, but I still have hope for Trey Lance. I really do. I know people might think that I'm saying that for effect. I'm not. I really do believe that if you're smart enough, and he is, if you're athletic enough, and he is, if football's important enough to you, and it is for him, then eventually you'll figure it out. And so I'm still in that camp, and I'm going to hold to that. That's my professional evaluation of Trey Lance, is that he wasn't good enough, he's not consistent enough, the skill set was way overhyped, he's not as athletic as that, he's not as arm strength, is not as he doesn't have all that arm strength, he doesn't have all that foot speed, you know what I mean? He's not this like once in a lifetime physical Anthony Richardson type athlete. He's not. And if you thought he was, I don't know what you're looking at, but I do think that he's in the right spot with the Chargers, and I think he's going to rekindle his career. I think one of the stories of August is going to be Trey Lance puts himself back on the NFL map.
I love that. That is bold, but Trey Lance he's shown that flash. I think he can show that flash when it's not all given to him. That's the best spot for him, as you said. So clearly it's Herbert's franchise, and now maybe Lance can give them something somewhere. And do you drop packages for Trey Lance? Is that the other area? I mean, do you want to see Lance in there?
No.
I mean, okay.
No, I don't, because I don't think he has the kind of, he's not Anthony Richardson. He's not a runner. He's a guy that needs to make it from the pocket. So if he's a runner, he's like a fullback. I mean, he's not a receiver. He's not a running back. He's not fast like that. But I do think he's got enough positive traits and enough athleticism and enough desire and intelligence and motivation and the whole thing. I just don't believe he's going to be washed out.
And you don't like the Taysom Hill idea. You don't like the Taysom Hill idea either, right? Where
no,
he's
not
got,
for him.
He's in there and he's got different packages that he's running.
I like that idea.
Situation. Yeah, but
I don't like that idea for him.
No, you're right. Well, that does pigeonhole him. We all know Taysom Hill. No one's given the franchise to Taysom Hill, and Trey's probably still thinking he can be that for somebody. So great. I love it. I love where you stood on that.
So
yeah.
That's the AFC West. Now let's jump to the NFC West. And we're going to finish up this video, by the way. I'm going to give you 12 quarterbacks that I think are going to be really, really interesting to watch as the summer progresses and could be 49ers at the cutdown if things break the right way, and I'll explain in a bit. But let's take a look at the NFC West quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Arizona's got Kyler Murray as their one. Jacoby Brissett is backing him up. Clayton Tune was drafted out of Houston, and he's been there for a couple years, and he's kind of an intriguing, athletic young quarterback. So that's Arizona. The Rams have Stafford, who's clearly the best quarterback in the division. Garoppolo as the number 2, only in L.A., and then Stetson Bennett. There's a small guy from Georgia, doesn't have a lot of stature or arm strength. Then you have Seattle. Seattle's got Sam Darnold. Despite his struggles in OTAs, John Schneider has said, hey, Mike McDonald has said, he's our guy. He's our number 1 guy. Drew Lock is the true number 2 backup. And then they have Jalen Milroe. And Milroe is really intriguing because you're talking about 6'2", 225, 4.3 speed, really good arm strength. Football's important to him. He's super raw. He's not ready. but he has an amazing Anthony Richardson-like skill set. And there's some people that feel like Milroe just needs time. So I'm very intrigued by Seattle's situation. I think Seattle has the most combustible quarterback situation in the entire league because they brought in Darnold, and they're going to stand behind him because of the money. But I don't think Darnold is appreciably better than Locke. And I'm not sure that either of those two guys is better long-term than Milroe. And I think Milroe's athleticism is such that if these guys struggle and Milroe puts it together, I mean, he's got Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's got a decent number one receiver there. I just think there's a very good chance that this season is going to start with Sam Darnold as the number one. Darnold's going to turn the ball over because that's what he does. Drew Lock is going to come in and replace him from time to time. Eventually, there's going to be a longer-term injury and a bigger warm-up, act, and I think that's when they go to Milroe. And I think by the end of the year, we're talking about Seattle is going forward with Jalen Milroe as their number one, and that they shouldn't have gotten involved with Sam Darnold.
Which
but in a lot of ways, I think this is the biggest blow-up spot in the league. You're looking for where, because teams blow up sometimes because of the quarterback position. And I just think that Seattle's going to blow up because Darnold's going to show some good things, then he's going to turn it over, then he's going to have some injuries behind a sketchy line, and by the November, December, Milroe's going to get a shot. He's going to show just enough. By the end of the year, we're going to talk about Milroe.
So, in other words, here's the fascinating conversation that we're having today, Larry. And you've gone over this, and like I told you, this is a terrible scenario for Seattle based on what they've done and what they've given the money for. Obviously, this is not the way they want their season to end if Darnold's not the quarterback, right? They didn't hand that money out for this to end with someone else taking snaps for them. So, oftentimes, the best quarterback room could mean that you have a terrible quarterback situation also, right? Because the saying goes that if you have more than one quarterback, you have no quarterbacks, right? That is something that is said, right? If you're not thrilled with your number one and you've got three behind him that can do something, well, yeah, that means you're set up to start games. But maybe it means you're not set up to win games because you don't have the guy who can make a difference at that position. That's probably what you're saying most about Seattle. They got a lot of guys that can start games, a lot of guys that will get you through the 60 minutes, but not necessarily guys who are going to be better than the other guy on the other side making throws. And that's really what you have here, unfortunately. And Milroe, you like most because we know the least about him. Drew Lock, we sort of know what we're getting. Darnold, at this point, you're saying is going to be more the guy that we saw before last season. And therefore, Milroe gives you the most upside. So that's the most interesting. So again, this may be the most interesting quarterback room. The problem is there's not really an alpha at this point.
If I believed in Darnold,
yeah,
I would say this is one of the better quarterback rooms because you got a true one, you got a true two, and you got a long-range prospect with major upside ability. So this would be a very high-ranking room if I believed in Sam Darnold. But because I think Darnold's going to fall on his face, and I think, then now you got a solid number two in Locke and a long-range guy who's pretty raw in Milroe. But if you don't have that established starter, you cannot be ranked as one of the five best quarterback rooms in the league.
No,
otherwise I would.
Yeah, I get it. We already said we had Kansas City at that level because of that. And I want to just make one. I want to go back and retract one thing I said. It wasn't Cam Miller I was thinking about. Tommy Millott is the kid that could play both positions. I was thinking about the other kid that was drafted right behind him with the Raiders.
He's actually playing. Yes, slot receiver.
Exactly. He's converting at this level to receiver, but obviously spent most of his career in college as a quarterback. So interested, that'll be an interesting one. Not Cam that would play both ways, Cam Miller. There you go.
So Tommy Millott is interesting, and he's going to get a tryout with the Raiders as a slot receiver, and I think he's got he really runs well, so that will be interesting to see. And then there's the Niners, right? And let's talk about the Niners. To me, the Niners have a very interesting quarterback room. Purdy's the clear one. He's signed, sealed, and delivered. He's the clear starter. Curtis Rourke is the clear long-term developmental guy who may even spend the year on IR or PUP or NFI or one of these lists because he's rehabbing an injury. So Purdy's going to be the one for sure. And Rourke is going to be the four for sure. And Rourke is most likely not going to be even on the practice squad. He's probably going to be on some kind of an injured list as he rehabs. So then really the Niner quarterback dilemma comes down to, is Mac Jones the 2 and Tanner Mordecai's the 3? Well, that's the plan. That is the clear plan. Mac Jones has been given $4.75 million guaranteed to be the number 2 quarterback. And if he beats out Mordecai, he is the number 2 quarterback. If they battle to an even standstill, I still think Mac Jones is the number 2 quarterback based on the financial commitment. If Mordecai slightly outplays Mac Jones, I think Mac Jones is still going to be the number 2 quarterback at that point, and Mordecai will still be number 3. Where this gets interesting is if Tanner Mordecai, who's been in this offense for an extra year and has a better arm than Jones and has much better mobility than Jones, if he badly outplays Jones in summer and in the preseason, then Mordecai is going to be the number 2 quarterback. And in that scenario, I think Jones gets traded. And I think, because I don't think the 49ers are going to pay him $4.75 million to be number 3. And I don't think he came here to be number 3. So if he winds up losing out to Tanner Mordecai, I don't think the odds are high of that happening. I would say it's more like 25%. Probably 75% Jones is number 2, 25% chance that Mordecai badly outplays him. And then in that scenario, Mordecai's the 2, and Mac Jones, I think, is dealt, because I don't think he's going to be here as the number 3. And that's why we're going to finish up this video with the 12 quarterbacks that could be available in August for the 49ers if Mordecai beats out Mac Jones and the Niners trade Mac Jones and are looking for that 3rd quarterback.
Isn't that your best case scenario, by the way? Isn't that your best case, that Tanner outplays Mac Jones? I mean, look, when Mac Jones arrived, I remember there was this sort of sigh of relief, and it was before Brock had got the $50 million. But I remember that there was, oh, wow, we've got a great backup. I don't think Mac Jones is the kind of guy that wins games because he's better than the quarterback on the other team. Now, he can run an offense, and he clearly got given that chance in New England, and technically he led a team to the playoffs. That is all true. But
he had a Pro Bowl, I mean, as a rookie, believe it or not.
We all know what happens with Pro Bowl and how you end up on that list, right? Because a number of guys don't play. But you are right. Mac Jones, if you're in an arbitration with his agent, is going to come off as the kind of guy who deserves exactly the money that he's getting right now, and potentially even more, and was given the reins to a franchise that we all believe in, with a coach who knows what it takes at that position. Bill Belichick and the Patriots thought he could be their future. He's not that answer in New England, clearly, at this point. And the idea that the Niners are okay because Mac Jones is the backup, the drop between Purdy and Mac Jones is great. For those that don't believe it, then you don't believe in this team. You do not want Mac Jones running this team. Obviously, it's only going to happen because Brock Purdy is unable to play because he's injured. There's obviously no battle here between Mac Jones and Brock Purdy. But to me, what you just set up, which I hadn't heard before you said it, Larry, great scenario, is that Mordecai outplays Mac Jones, and now other teams will believe in what I just said. Mac Jones is, quote, a Pro Bowler, quote, set a team up for the playoffs, was given the reins in New England, etc. There's sort of a name cachet to the idea that Mac Jones feels like a safe option. Jacksonville decided last season that it was going nowhere whatsoever. If they were in a playoff push, Trevor Lawrence could have gotten back on that field at the end of the season. And instead, they basically decided for 2 games, we'll punt and let Mac Jones take it. And that was cute. That was interesting. He had a nice shootout in the game with the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae going nuts in that game where Mac Jones had put them in position to win. But Mac Jones cannot, again, I don't think there's really very few situations where you're going to think, all right, Mac Jones puts us in a great spot. I think the upside on some guys that we haven't heard of a lot of times is better. This is the one position where so many times arguments are leveled in sports, Larry, when we bring up a guy's name that you've heard of, and therefore everyone is nodding their head like, oh yeah, we know what that guy can do. Quarterback's interesting because, as you know as a scout, so often we get it wrong. So often the mock draft is wrong. So often the people actually in the front office are just wrong with where they think certain guys are going to go and end up. And this is the one position that for some reason, people just can't seem to get exactly right. The conversation was Darnold or Josh Rosen. I mean, think about that. I mean, these are the conversations that happen in these drafts. And look who's drafted. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are in that same draft, right? And we're sitting here dissecting Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen while Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are getting drafted after them. So that's, or in between actually with the way Allen went. But that wasn't the conversation. It wasn't about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. If you go back in time, that's what you want it to be. So Mac Jones may feel good, but it's the guys you haven't heard of, which a lot of times are the better upside, the better option. Your team will be more excited. And guess who knows that better than anybody else? Mr. Irrelevant. The Niners drafted Brock Purdy not thinking he was going to be their future $50 million quarterback. Am I right, Larry?
Totally.
This is what happens.
They liked him.
Happens. Yeah,
they liked him, but he surprised them with his arm strength, his athleticism, and just how substantial he was. And I'm suggesting that Mac Jones may get dealt. He'll get dealt if Mordecai beats him out. But Mordecai may beat him out. It may happen. And you sit there and say, well, wait a second. If he gets beat up by Tanner Mordecai, there will be no trade market for him. That means he sucks. No, not necessarily.
No.
I think Tanner Mordecai's been in this offense longer. He may just outplay him. Jones could play well, but Mordecai could be better. And if that's the scenario, Mac Jones is a better backup than what Baker Mayfield has in Tampa.
You're right.
Kyle Trask and Michael Pratt and Connor Bazelak. Mac Jones is better than those guys. And Mac Jones is better than Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen backing up Jared Goff in Detroit. I mean, if Jared Goff goes down with an injury, they could very well want Mac Jones. Lamar Jackson's backup is Cooper Rush. Josh Allen's backup is Mitchell Trubisky.
Which again, and Trubisky has that same kind of Mac Jones cachet. Oh, I remember when he had the Bears in position to win a playoff game, if not for a double doink field goal, right? I mean, Mitch Trubisky won that division. A division with the Packers and the Lions. I mean, think about that, right? I mean, it's not that long. You don't have to go that far back in history to think and to convince yourself that you've seen Mitch Trubisky win games at a significant level. But the idea, as I just mentioned, is, yeah, that sort of happened, but obviously the Bears are no longer thinking Mitch Trubisky is their answer. The other thing I want to say in regards to Mordecai is sometimes the front office knows, and sometimes on the field, the players know. If you're there in camp, you know that a guy has got it, and you're not letting the rest of the league know that. Howie Roseman gets a lot of credit. You know how he built that 2017 Super Bowl championship? They traded Sam Bradford away because they knew that Wentz was ready to start. The rest of the league didn't know that in that moment he was absolutely ready to be the guy. It's identifying those things early on and making moves because you know that a guy can go immediately and you trade the other pieces. That's what it takes. And if they understand that Mordecai can be that guy, what you set up is brilliant.
Yeah, and Lee Ving's like, trade for what if he can't beat out Mordecai? It's not really trading. It's not what you're getting. It's just, I'm saying, if Mordecai beats him out, and it's decisive, Mac's not going to be here as the number 3. 831 Alex says Mac Jones will win QB2. Kyle likes him. End of story. Kyle likes all these guys. That's why they're there. Kyle handpicked this entire room of guys. So he likes all these guys. He likes Tanner Mordecai too. And he's going to like whoever plays the best. That's kind of it. All right. So that's the NFC and AFC West. Now let's go into the AFC and NFC East. We'll start there, okay? Miami's got Tua Tagovailoa, Zach Wilson, Quinn Ewers, who left Texas, took a pay cut to jump to the NFL, and then somebody named Brett Gabbert, who I'm not familiar with. So Tua's the 1, Wilson's the 2, Ewers is the hope of being the long-term answer. Skylar Thompson's no longer there. So that's Miami. Then you got Buffalo.
Well, quickly before you leave Miami, I just want to say one thing. All of the talk was about where Shedeur Sanders slipped in the draft, right, Larry? That was it. That was the only conversation. When it came to slipping, really, what story would be bigger than that? I mean, we've never been more wrong about where somebody might go and where he ends up. It's the most, if we were talking underrated and overrated, I like to argue that the most underrated quarterback in the history of this league was Shedeur Sanders, right? Or sorry, overrated. The most he was, just by the fact that you are rated somewhere, this is where we think you're going to, and where you end up. That he was truly overrated for what the league thinks about him right now. The other guy, though, and his agent came out after the draft was over, Quinn Ewers' agent was pissed. He couldn't believe that Ewers fell where he did. Ewers was supposed to be a guy coming out of Texas that was going to be a significant draft piece. This was going to be a guy.
He's a 5-star recruit coming out of Southlake.
This is a guy this is a great flyer. Especially if you take it back, if you take the hype away from before the draft, Ewers is a guy that's supposed to be in the conversation for top drafted quarterback from that class, and it did not happen. So that's Very interesting. The Miami thing gets really interesting because we all know that it feels paper thin at QB1. We know that their situation could change immediately because all of a sudden, when your chart goes 1, 2, 3, and you take out number 1, things get really interesting. You're sliding up 2 and 3 now. Ewers, there should be some excitement there. I hope that in that camp they're seeing something out of Ewers because that could be special. Because what they had out of Tua.
I liked him too at Texas, but I thought he looked horrible at Indy. I mean, I thought Quinn Ewers looked terrible at the combine. I don't know what happened. He just doesn't look that substantial as a thrower. He just didn't look like he had arm strength. I didn't know. I was shocked.
And what was the conversation in Texas? I mean, Arch Manning is there. That's not a light quarterback to be behind you either at Texas. And there was a lot of talk about getting Arch in there.
Well, he was not going to be the quarterback at Texas, so he knew he was either going to have to go somewhere else or go to the NFL. He went to the NFL. I don't know if it's going to work out, but he's number 3 in Miami. Then there's Buffalo. Buffalo obviously has maybe the best quarterback outside of Mahomes in the world, right? It's Josh Allen. He's fantastic. But this is another team. Now, granted, Josh Allen's indestructible. He's 6'6", he's 250. You can't hit him. You can't knock him out. This and that. But if you can, Buffalo's cooked because they have Mitchell Trubisky, Mike White, and Shane Buechele. And there's not a good quarterback to be had there anywhere. Trubisky was not a good quarterback. Hasn't been a good quarterback. He can run a little bit. I don't think he's that smart. I don't think he's that accurate. I don't think he's that good. Mike White, Shane Buechele, less. If Josh Allen gets knocked out, the Bills are done.
Remember when Mike White was saying, wasn't Mike White the one that was given the contract in Chicago to become I think he was the backup in Tampa. He was given a big contract in Chicago at one point. And then I can't remember that another quarterback came in to take the job from him almost immediately. So Mike White was handed money once and never again. And Trubisky, as I said, there's this sigh of relief in your room that you've got a guy because everyone nods and understands and remembers the name. But you're right. Look, very few of these conversations.
Mr. Biscuit.
Exactly.
That's his nickname, Mr. Biscuit.
Mr. Biscuit.
You wouldn't trade this guy for a biscuit.
You would right now. Very few teams. I mean, let's be clear about this conversation. Very few of these are going to be that we say, oh, you lost your quarterback and now you're excited because of who's coming in next. I mean, everyone wants their QB1 to start. There's a few battles here. We know there's not a battle in Buffalo, but don't necessarily sigh on the idea that, okay, we're okay because Trubisky's there because he started games. This is one where he's probably started enough games that we've seen it, that anyone with tape, like if Trubisky came into a game because Allen got knocked out in the third quarter and he had to finish the fourth, that's his best case scenario, right? The idea that the team didn't prepare for Trubisky and now they've got to take him on in that scenario, that's best shot. Preparing a week for Trubisky, no shot. He's got no shot. Anybody's taking him down.
Buffalo would rank in the top 5 if we were just ranking starting quarterbacks, obviously. But in quarterback rooms, no. They're not going to rank in the top 5. Now let's look at the other teams in this division. New England's got Drake May in year 2. They also picked up Josh Dobbs from the Niners. And their number 3 quarterback is a local kid, Ben Woolridge, who's from the Bay Area. He went to Foothill High School in Pleasanton, came to the Niners local pro day. He's kind of an interesting player. So I kind of like this quarterback room. It's very controversy free. May is going to be the clear one. Dobbs is the veteran backup, very smart, very professional. He's the clear 2. And you got a young quarterback to develop in Woolridge. It's actually not a bad quarterback room. If I felt better about May or better about Woolridge long term, maybe I would rank them higher. But I think it's a good quarterback room because it's one where you have a defined starter. He's clearly your guy. You have a defined number 2. And you got a young third quarterback who can develop. I think this is a very healthy room. Very healthy room.
And remember, they also were able to use this room to create pieces for next season. Even the Milton trade is right. I mean, right. I mean, they end up seeing something out of Milton late in the season also, which cost them actually some draft capital because they won that game. But Milton comes in and plays great, and now they know, and then Dallas takes the flyer there. So this is a team that's clearly figured it out so much at quarterback that there were actually two pieces that they got out of last season, which is pretty nice to know that May's the clear starter, and then to know that Milton is good enough that other teams are actually calling about him. That was nice. I mean, that's the best case scenario of using your week 18 when you know that you don't have a playoff berth on the line, and yet look what they got out of it. They didn't just say, oh, now we know who our backup is. No, so much so that someone else came calling for him. So that was nice. The other thing I want to say about New England is, as you look at depth charts, their running back room is outstanding. Not just for name value. The fact that they have two Travions is just hilarious at one position. That's awesome, by the way. Great. But Antonio Gibson, both Travions, and Ramondre Stevenson, it's just, there's just clear, it's almost like any one of those guys you could see getting the ball and doing something special. Antonio Gibson, who we once thought could be the next Christian McCaffrey when Ron Rivera was talking about him in Washington. But it's a great running back room, by the way.
Well, it's a very improved receiver room with Stephon Diggs and the kid from Wazoo, and they got all kinds of talent. Yes. I think New England is a team to watch. All right, let's talk about the quarterback room that is pure chaos, and that's the Jets. This is chaos. Okay, why is this chaos? Well, you got Justin Fields as the number one. He's got huge talent, but he got benched after a 4-2 record with the Steelers because he has no talent as a quarterback at all. He can't throw with anticipation. He doesn't see the field. He fumbles. He's got 4.4 speed, but he still gets sacked a ton because he holds the ball. He doesn't sense rushers. Justin Fields is a scout's dream, and he's a coach's nightmare. So he's the number one quarterback with the Jets, and there'll be tremendous pressure to just let him play. But then they also have Tyrod Taylor as the backup, who is a more than suitable NFL backup. But then they also have two young quarterbacks in Adrian Martinez, who played at Nebraska, and Brady Cook, who played at Missouri, and they're really intriguing. Martinez is tough and smart and competitive and was really a good college quarterback, and he's got some athleticism. Brady Cook is downright athletic as heck. I mean, this guy's got a faster 10-yard split than Brock Purdy. This is a really fast runner. This is a guy with 4.5 speed. He's really athletic, and he's kind of a gamer. So I like Brady Cook, and I like Adrian Martinez, and I can see all the flaws of Justin Fields. So this room, if Fields were great, this might be one of the best NFL quarterback rooms because you have a great quarterback, number one, then you have Tyrod Taylor, a proven number two, and then you got two really intriguing young quarterbacks who are in that developmental stage. I would love this quarterback room if Fields were good, but instead, Fields really is not that good, and yet he is the number one guy. And you have the veteran backup, who's also better than Brady Cook and Adrian Martinez. But Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook are probably the best quarterbacks on the roster. So they probably should play. But on this team, they're not going to because Fields is going to play and then Taylor's going to play. So I think this is chaos for the Jets. I mean, I know some people look at that and go, oh, Justin Fields is, with Garrett Wilson. And
Nope. No,
Justin Fields is not a quarterback who throws with any accuracy, any timing, anticipation. The ball does not come out consistently. It does not come out on time. He doesn't read coverage. He doesn't know what he's doing. He got benched last year for Russell Wilson, and it wasn't that he wasn't playing that. I mean, it was like more airs of omission than commission because you get to the red zone. And if you can't throw with anticipation in the red zone, you can't throw. So he can't throw with anticipation in the red zone. So he stinks. I mean, I liked him in the draft. I'll freely admit I was wrong. I thought, oh man, get this guy 4.4 flat speed and the accuracy that he demonstrates from time to time. But then you watch him play football and you're like, no, he doesn't see it. He doesn't see coverage. He holds the ball forever. He can't throw with anticipation. I mean, that's game over. So I think the Jets are very intriguing, but it's chaos.
Yeah, I'm going to make it quick on this one. I have a lot to say about the Jets, but I want to get to some other teams as well. This simply looks like a depth chart, Larry, where you've got a clear QB1, and then these are the guys behind him. That's really what it looks like. It looks like this. It looks almost as if, think about it, Aaron Rodgers still being on this roster and then saying, wow, what a battle for number 2. You're going to have Fields or Tyrod going for number 2 there, and then you've got some depth behind them. It really just feels like this is a quarterback room without QB1. That's all it feels like. It just, Fields was in his best spot last season. Why? Because he wasn't even supposed to be QB1. And then he's there out of injury to start the first few games. They play above their head. As you said, they're not lighting it up on offense either. It just simply feels like that. This is a great quarterback room if there's a QB1 that we care about. And there just isn't here. There just isn't a QB1 that we're ready to say. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. All right, let's move to the NFC East. Dallas has Dak Prescott. They have Joe Milton. They have Will Grier. Okay, so Milton's the clear 2, Greer's the 3, Prescott's the 1. He's getting paid. I don't love that room. I don't love Prescott. Milton's got a huge arm, but he's really raw. And I think Dallas has 0 quarterbacks you can win with. Grier is just a guy. Don't like that quarterback room much at all.
I think Dallas. I'm surprised that Cooper Rush was on this roster last season. I thought 2 seasons ago they had seen enough from Cooper Rush getting the chance in for Dak Prescott that he didn't need to be there. The stats say, and by the way, win-loss going to the quarterback is always just really, it's a strange thing to go to the quarterback that only he's the only one that gets this win-loss. Cooper Rush, I believe, was maybe 4-1 as the starter for Dak or something in there. But if you really go back and look at it, this wasn't because of Cooper Rush. And I just thought they should have been quicker to that. I thought last season was a chance to have something better behind him. And then, of course, they needed it and only had Cooper Rush. And that was no great. And that's where the Trey Lance conversation started to happen, et cetera. But behind Dak, you also have to have this. It's not quite Miami level Tua where you're thinking about who's going to be in there. But Dallas is the team that has to think about who do we have there because this guy plays games. This guy starts games. The QB2 starts games in Dallas. That's just the reality. I like Dak a lot. And when Dak's healthy, Dak's got a winning record against the Eagles. I mean, Dak is special in great games. I've seen it. I know that for those that don't like him. I've seen Dak be at that level, but there are games he doesn't start. That is reality. You need someone who can start games in Dallas behind him.
And, obviously they're dreaming let's get the greatest athlete. They were dreaming that with Trey Lance. It didn't happen. Now they're dreaming that with Joe Milton. We'll see. Ultimately, I don't think they're going to win games. The rest of the quarterbacks in this division, I think, are really interesting. New York Giants. One, they've got the starter in Russell Wilson. They got a true number 2 in Jameis Winston. And they drafted their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart. And they have a 4th guy in Tommy DeVito. I would feel better about this if I felt better about, Wilson as the starter or Winston as the backup. I kind of like the fact that it's, they've addressed the quarterback, but I think that they clogged this up. I mean, this is a team that needs to play Jackson Dart and get Dart to Neighbors and get that whole connection going. And instead you bring in Wilson and Winston, almost guaranteeing that Dart won't get on the field for at least a month or 2. And I don't think that's in their best interest. So I think they threw a bunch of stuff at the wall, hoping something sticks. I don't believe in Russell anymore. I never believed in Winston, and I'm not a huge believer in Dart either, but at least he's got a decent arm. But that's an interesting room. Then you got Washington.
Quickly, it might be the most interesting room, and I know we want to get to all the teams here, but listen, this could be the most interesting room. If we were doing a show
we talked about a lot.
Right, exactly. I mean, the storylines out of Russell, Jameis, even what DeVito, I mean, think about it. Think about the headlines DeVito has had in New York also, starting and winning games that no one thought he would. And I like the Jackson Dart thing for the team that didn't end up drafting him. The idea that the Giants came in ahead of McVay and Snead, the Rams wanted Jackson Dart. There's been questions about Stafford. They identified Dart. They were going to draft Dart in the first round. The reason the Rams got out of the first round was as soon as New York traded up and took Dart, Rams said, forget it. Let's trade it in for something else. And they waited for day 2 to take a guy they liked. They wanted Jackson Dart. So that means the Giants now have that on their ledger. The guy that a front office that we do believe in, Snead and McVay, they wanted that quarterback, and the Giants got him. So that does look good at the moment before we see anything on the field.
But I think it's going to show that the Giants were smart to draft Dart, but not smart to clog up their quarterback spot with Wilson and Winston. I think it's going to be really difficult for them to get to Dart this year.
And
let's just say he's ready to roll. I mean, if he shows up in camp and he looks great, what are you going to bench Russell Wilson?
No.
You going to trade those guys?
This is what started this video, Larry. Think about this. You set it up. Where's the list of quarterbacks available for us if our quarterback goes down? New York's getting phone calls. If you're the scout there for that team asking, you're calling New York to say which one of these guys isn't winning the battle.
If you're looking for a starter. Yeah, no question. If you're looking for a starter, New York's going to be one of those teams that you call because I think Dart is probably going to wind up beating out Wilson and Winston. All right, let's go to the two other teams in the division. I think they're both set up really well at quarterback. First of all, Washington. You got Jaden Daniels. He's your guy in the present. He's your guy long term. You got Marcus Mariota, who's a very athletic number 2 quarterback. You got Josh Johnson there as well as kind of an emergency third. And then they drafted Sam Hartman out of Notre Dame, who, I mean, he's a handsome man with great hair, but I don't know if he's going to be a great quarterback. But it's intriguing. I mean, and the fact that you start your room with Daniels and Mariota, they're definitely one of the 5 best quarterback rooms in the sport right now, just off Daniels and Mariota. But I like Hartman too.
And again, you say this, what do you want to do with that QB2? Is he the kind of guy that can take the offense and you don't have to completely remake it around him? Mariota is the kind of guy who can take it over from Daniels and run a similar offense. Although if you go back and look, one of Mariota's first snaps coming in for Daniels last year was an awful botched play that Daniels ran 100 times that Mariota couldn't pull off. But that's okay. They'll get it. The style matches up.
Okay, and then we get to the Eagles. And the Eagles, to me, have the best quarterback room going right now. You got Jalen Hurts. He just won the Super Bowl. You got Tanner McKee, who is a legitimate number 2, and I think a long-term starter solution. And then you have drafted Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, who I really liked. And then you have DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I think is going to be one of the quarterbacks that I'll have as the dozen quarterbacks that may interest me for the 49ers at the end of at the cutdown. But I think Philly's got the best quarterback room going. Hurts, McKee, McCord. Now, there's a lot of people out there that don't watch college football and don't know anything about Tanner McKee. And they're sitting there going, what? Tanner McKee is and Kyle McCord are part of the best quarterback room in the sport. Yeah, because you got Hurts, who's a clear 1, and you got McKee, who's a 25-year-old 6'6" quarterback with smarts and accuracy and arm strength and everything. I mean, he's really good. And then McCord, I think, is a very good prospect. And I kind of like DTR. I think DTR gets cut here, but I think Philly's got the best quarterback room in football.
And I'll only sprinkle this in regards to McKee. Much like we were giving credit to New England for discovering what they had in Milton, Philly did the same thing with a week that didn't matter. They didn't need anything in the final week of the season. McKee starts that game, wins that game. They like what they have in McKee. They saw a little bit against in a Cowboys game that didn't mean as much. Also at the end of the season, they proved to the rest of the league, and maybe someone could steal McKee, to your point, just like Dallas did with Milton, to say, hey, maybe you don't need that guy as much as we do. Could also happen with McKee.
Let's jump quickly to NFC North or AFC North. Pittsburgh's got Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, Skylar Thompson. At different points in history, you could look at this and be like, hey, that could be one of the best quarterback rooms. But this is a disaster. This is a disaster. You just made, you moved heaven and earth. You got rid of Wilson. You got rid of Fields. You cleared all this for Rodgers. In reality, what are the Steelers going to do this year? If you looked at this team and said, okay, what would you bet that the Steelers accomplish this year? And I would say the Steelers are probably an 8-win type team, maybe a 9-win type team. Last year they won 10 games with Fields and Russell. So they won 10 games last year. You're telling me you went through all this stuff and, you signed this quarterback who held out and didn't show up in your offseason, and you're going to win more games? What, are you going to win 11 games? I don't buy it. They're going to win fewer games. Rodgers is going to get hurt. Their number 2 is Mason Rudolph. Their number 3 is Will Howard from Ohio State, K-State. And their 4th is Skylar Thompson. Howard and Thompson were teammates together at K-State once upon a time. I mean, you got a true number 2 in Rudolph, but I don't think he's very good. You got Rodgers, who's fading, and you got 2 young quarterbacks, but I don't think either of them. I'm not a Will Howard fan. I'm not a big Skylar Thompson fan, even though he can run a little bit. I think the Steelers are desperate. I think they're grasping at straws. I think it sets up for Mike Tomlin, who seemingly has the most job security of anybody, but I don't know, because they just gave Omar Khan a 3-year deal. And Mike Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. It's 2025. I realize he's won a Super Bowl and he's never had a losing season and so on and so forth, but I think this is the year. I think Tomlin and Rodgers, I think it's oil and water. It doesn't mix. Getting rid of Najee won't help. The Steelers' schedule in the second half is daunting. I say this is one of the rooms. Same way the Jets blew up, that room's going to blow up. I think the Steelers are going to blow up. I think it's a bad year for the Steelers. Stay away from the Steelers. I like Baltimore and Cincinnati in that division. I like the Steelers to win fewer games, and to me, that's a disaster. And, to win fewer games and do all they've done. They're going to get to the end of this year. They're not going to have on their roster their long-term quarterback or a current good starter, or be a playoff team. They're not going to. At the end of the year, they will have no playoff wins, no quarterback on their roster. That's the future, and I think Tomlin's eventually going to get the axe.
The only thing I'll say, because I was excited when we did the Ramsey conversation with the trade, I will only say Pittsburgh lost their final 5 games last season.
Wow.
There was something that had to be done, right? They lost their final 4 regular season games and then got smoked in the wild card by Baltimore. Something had to be done. But as I look at this at the most important position, I got to nod my head with you, Larry. It's murky at best. And if Rodgers has a gasp, the way Favre did with Minnesota, of course, this could be special. Big if at this point, considering what we've seen.
Yeah. Pittsburgh blows up this year. Watch.
And you don't like DK. Remember, everybody, Larry, you also don't really love DK Metcalf, and you would have to, if you're excited about Pittsburgh, that means you're excited about DK.
Well, and then are they going to trade TJ Watt? Sounds like they're going to trade TJ Watt. I mean, this Pittsburgh's not going in the right direction. Pittsburgh looks like they're about to crash. Baltimore Ravens are a Lamar Jackson injury away from being a non-playoff team. Their quarterback room is Lamar, Cooper Rush, and Dustin Leary, or Devin Leary. Devin Leary. Devin Leary's got a big arm strength. Cooper Rush is a quintessential backup. But Lamar is Lamar, and he runs a lot, and he takes hits, and if he gets hurt, they're done, because they're not winning anything without Lamar. Lamar is what makes their run game dynamic. He's the reason that Derrick Henry's having this late career renaissance. Their offensive line's good, but not spectacular. To me, if Lamar is out of there and you just have a regular pocket passer, now your run game doesn't work, the whole thing blows up. Lamar is absolutely cannot get hurt. Cannot get hurt. He gets hurt, they're cooked.
I'm with you, and it's very difficult. Who would you slot in? Like, who is the replacement to Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, you almost have to collect the best skills from other players and put them together like a robot to even come up with anything that would be the sort of prototype. If Lamar's out, this guy slides in to do everything Lamar can do. Nobody can handle that. Nobody would be that. You have to have a basically second offense. I think you have to have a second offense ready. Maybe Trey Lance could have been that guy, but again, and frankly, maybe a guy we're going to get to, Anthony Richardson, I would love as a backup in Baltimore. I would love that scenario
Russell.
for him.
Or Russell.
Okay.
Russell
Yeah.
Wilson.
Not bad. Not bad.
All right, let's look at the rest of the division. Cincinnati's got Joe Burrow, great starter. Jake Browning, really good backup. They have Logan Woodside, and they have Peyton Thorne from Auburn. Peyton Thorne's kind of interesting. He's the son of a coach. Very mobile. They called him Vanilla Vic at Auburn because he was such an incredible runner. And then, so you got, to me, that's a very good quarterback room led by one of the best. And then Cleveland's probably the most interesting quarterback room as far as discussion this summer. Why?
The phone is ringing. The phone is ringing already.
And it's chaos before we even go anywhere. You got Deshaun Watson. He's out for the year, and he's got a contract that's strangling the franchise. And he's a blight on the entire league for his antics. Then you've got Flacco, the veteran, Kenny Pickett, the 2. But then you also drafted Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So to me, this is the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey circus. I mean, this is, Joe Flacco should probably win the job, but Shedeur has had some good practices. Some people think it's Dylan Gabriel. The only guy that I say it won't be Kenny Pickett. To me, it will either be Flacco or Shedeur. But that, to me, it could be that's going to be such a dynamic room to watch. And I have no idea what to expect. None.
That could, again, as we said with New York, this could be a show in and of itself because we would love to see it because it would be interesting, right? I mean, which of the two win out? We sort of think there's a battle happening between Dylan and Shedeur to be that quarterback of the future, as you say. You like to slot these things as QB1, your QB2 is your backup, and then you sort of where your future is headed with the other guy. But this will be a phone ringing situation where as soon as someone is identified as the starter, everyone will call for who is the backup or the QB3 in Cleveland because there should be somebody available here, whether it's Dylan, whether it's Shedeur. And frankly, you were talking about Pittsburgh. I could see Kenny Pickett ending up back in Pittsburgh. If something were to happen to Rodgers, I could see Pittsburgh considering the idea that they once were headed seemingly in the right direction with Pickett. He was shipped to Philly as a backup, but maybe that would happen if, to your point, he doesn't end up winning the job clearly there as the starter. And Flacco took the team to the playoffs 2 years ago. Flacco took this team, which again was the number 1 defense. And remember, Myles Garrett is still there. They drafted well on defense yet again on the defensive line specifically. So Cleveland could put something together yet again. And could Flacco give us enough here to start the season? I could see that.
Let's move to the NFC North. And I think this is maybe the most interesting quarterback division in all of football. Why? Okay, well, because I really think that the starters could get knocked out across the board here. You've got Caleb Williams in Chicago. Now he's got Ben Johnson. They added a bunch of weapons. I mean, God knows he's got a really good cast. They improved their offensive line. So they're eliminating all the excuses. They're checking all the boxes. Ryan Poles is going through this thing. Ben Johnson, check. New offensive interior, check. New offensive tackles, check. New receivers, check. I mean, he's systematically going through this thing. Need another tight end. Got
tight
that.
End.
Yeah, I mean, they're checking boxes. But their quarterback room right now is Caleb Williams is the 1. Tyson Bagent is the number 2. They brought in Case Keenum to be that number 2. He could be the number 3. They also have Austin Reed, who threw passes to Malachi Corley at Western Kentucky. And I'll tell you right now, Austin Reed ain't no slouch. He's no slouch. He ain't bad. I'm not a believer in Caleb, and I do believe that Bagent and Reed have talent. So I think there's and Caleb took 67 sacks last year. So the odds of him getting knocked out this year because he doesn't read coverage well and he holds the ball too long are pretty good. So I think that's a very, very volatile situation with high expectations, lots of talent, and we'll see if Caleb can meet those expectations. My guess is he can't, and that this thing blows up. And that it's Bagent and Reed and Keenum and others. So that's Chicago.
I want the most significant thing that is said today on this feed to be that Larry just doesn't believe in Caleb Williams, and I think that should stand. You've seen quarterbacks for a long time. You have judged and rated quarterbacks for specific things they do on the field, not just for the idea that the fans don't like them. You didn't like Caleb at SC. You probably didn't like Caleb at Oklahoma. I mean, right? I mean, you have not liked Caleb Williams.
I'm not a Caleb fan. I'm not a fan of. He's made some spectacular plays, but it's really hard to evaluate SC quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Darnold made a lot of great plays. Matt Barkley made a lot of great plays. Rob Johnson I've been watching SC quarterbacks for 25 years look great and then come to the pros and do nothing. And Caleb holds the ball too long. Period. End of discussion. I mean, that's really it. The ball's got to come out. I think Ben Johnson's going to pull his hair out if he had any, trying to get Caleb Williams up to speed. So that's Chicago. Then you got Detroit. Detroit, as we mentioned, has got Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, and Kyle Allen are the backups. You have no Frank Ragnow in front of Jared Goff. He's not mobile, and his backup is Hendon Hooker. So I think Jared Goff injury absolutely blows up their season. Then you got Green Bay. You got Jordan Love, Malik Willis, Sean Clifford. They also added, I think, one of the most interesting quarterbacks to keep your eyes on this summer, Taylor Elgersma. And you say, what? 6'6" guy who played in Canada in 12-man football for Laurier. But he's big, and he's got a howitzer, and he can run, and he looked good in the Senior Bowl. He's not going to play. He's a true developmental player on a team that will not play him. I'd be very, very surprised if he plays at all. But, Jordan Love is, it's a big year for him to prove what he's got. And they've got Malik Willis behind him. When Malik Willis played last year, Green Bay ran the ball like 53 times in a game.
But let's
so
give
they
Green
obviously
Bay credit.
don't believe much in him.
I want to give Green Bay the credit for one thing that many teams on this list we cannot say. This is a playoff team where their quarterback missed games last season and they had to rely on their backup to win significant games. Green Bay actually was able to win games with Malik Willis to keep it afloat with their $50 million starter injured. So this is a team that believed heavily, invested in their quarterback position, and yet still was able to stay afloat and win with their backup. So I want to give credit to Love and Willis. The combination of two quarterbacks had this team in the playoffs in a division that we all know was stacked with what Minnesota and Detroit did last season.
This quietly could be the best quarterback room in the league. If Jordan Love continues to progress and is really a great young quarterback, if Willis, who's got good arm strength, if he learns their system and he can win games again, if they can win games with Willis at quarterback, you got Clifford, who was solid at Penn State, who's just he's more of a third string guy, but he's probably going to lose his job to Taylor Elgersma, but Elgersma is a major talent. So, in a way, if Jordan Love's at the top of his game, if Malik Willis is on top of his game, and if Taylor Elgersma's the prospect that some people think he is, this room potentially could be the best quarterback room in the entire league. Then you have Minnesota. Okay, Minnesota's got J.J. McCarthy. You have Sam Howell, Brett Rippon, and Max Brosmer from the University of Minnesota, who's going to be very popular in-state. Get him in there, Brosmer, because he's they all saw him in college. Very volatile situation, though. McCarthy is the guy, but Darnold was the guy last year. Howell has got a really good arm and great foot speed, very athletic, and Brosmer is as well. I think there's a little too much rawness to McCarthy, and these prospects are a little too closely grouped for this to be smooth. You know what I mean? It could be smooth, and McCarthy could be great, and Howell could just be the number two, and Brosmer's their distant future guy. But I think McCarthy's going to have bumps in the road. I think there's going to be times where he's going to get knocked out. Howell's going to play. And I just think these quarterbacks are too close to each other in talent. I'm not a big J.J. McCarthy fan.
This is another scenario similar to the Jets where you say if you weren't identifying anyone as QB1, you'd be interested. This is just fascinating.
Good competition,
right?
McCarthy versus
JJ,
Howell
right.
in a real competition might be worth watching.
Yes, if you really thought that McCarthy wasn't given the reins, this would be interesting. And the other thing to point out is if money's not a factor in the NFL, and we all know that it is, this is also a totally different conversation because Darnold kept you afloat when you had identified JJ in the preseason as being your starter. Then he's hurt. In the same moment you discover he's going to be your starter, he's hurt. Now Darnold has to come in. The really terrible conundrum you were in is that Darnold was going to have to get paid. So as Darnold was winning games, it was therefore making it less and less likely that he could come back the next season. And that's simply what happened. So you had to pull out the rug from underneath what would have been a nice, easy transition for McCarthy. Darnold earned too much money in what he did, and now it has to be given to JJ because money is the biggest factor.
Well, you got a lot of internal pressure here, too, because Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are going to want a certain amount of production. And if McCarthy, for whatever reason, struggles, there could be some internal finger pointing here. Now, McCarthy's interesting. He played well, but he played in such a small sample size that I don't know if we really know what he is. And Howell has got, as I said, a good skill set himself. So I think Minnesota's got potential, but there's a lot of question marks there. All right, let's move to the AFC South, our final division. Houston's got C.J. Stroud, star, Davis Mills, backup, Graham Mertz, and Keaton Slovis. It's a pretty good room, really, because you got a great young quarterback in Stroud. You got a true number two in Mills. I'm not a Slovis fan. I like Graham Mertz a little bit, but I don't really like Mertz or Slovis much. So I like Stroud and I like Mills, but I don't know about their future. Now they don't need a big future quarterback because Stroud is their guy. We'll see. We'll see about this one. But this is an interesting room because Stroud at times looks like one of the great young quarterbacks in the sport, and Davis Mills is smart and he's athletic and he's a really good number 2.
I'm going to save all of my air for this conversation for Indianapolis. All right.
Okay.
I want you to run through the teams, and then let's have the conversation about the Colts, because there's no doubt that isn't the most interesting.
Okay. So this is a very interesting division, I think, for quarterbacks. So that's Houston. Okay. Then there's Tennessee. Tennessee's got Cam Ward. I'm a big believer in Cam Ward. But there's also some bad vibes here because there's Will Levis, who was drafted to be the starting quarterback and operated behind a horrible line. And now they upgraded their line and brought in Cam. But I'm sure Levis is sitting there going, well, if you'd upgraded your line last year, maybe I would have been better. So you got Levis going, hey, man, he may at any point demand a trade and say I want out, which could happen. They also have Brandon Allen, who left the Niners to go there. So that gives Cam Ward a really solid veteran guy you can watch film with. And Tim Boyle, who's a decent backup quarterback as well. Now, I think this room is really good because I love Cam Ward. And I think Brandon Allen's a real pro. So I think Levis and Ward are going to benefit from watching film with Brandon Allen. There's no doubt. But the competition that exists between the vibes and the bad vibes between Levis and the team over, his status as I was the starter, now I'm the backup. He's too young of a man to accept being the backup. So I think Will Levis could demand out and he could be traded. He's a guy that definitely could be traded, but I'm a real believer in Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's going to be a very, very good player. I don't know if it's going to be right away, but I think he's going to be a very, very good player. I think Cam Ward's got some magic there. All right, now let's move to the 2 most interesting quarterback teams, I think, in this division. Jacksonville and Indy. So Jacksonville has Trevor Lawrence, and they have Nick Mullins, former Niner, as the number 2. They also have John Wofford there. But they added a quarterback in Seth Hennigan, who I love. He's got a photographic memory. He was really good at Memphis. His quarterback school episode with Gruden was fantastic. He's kind of a quiet kid, but this guy's got good arm strength. He's good in the clutch. He had a game-winning come-from-behind touchdown to Jack Betch in the Senior Bowl. He throws a very catchable ball. I think Seth Hennigan, I'm going to say it right now. I think Seth Hennigan is going to compete with Trevor Lawrence. I really do. Now, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy, right? They invested a ton. But Seth Hennigan is a NFL quarterback. And if he's cut, he's going to be a great get for somebody because he's too smart. He knows what to do with the ball. He's too accomplished. This guy did it. I mean, this guy really did it. And I'm a big fan of Hennigan. I would definitely say he's the number 2, but he probably isn't. It's probably number 2 is between Mullins and Wofford. And Hennigan is probably number 3 if Gladstone is a good personnel guy who really can identify talent. He comes from the Rams. And he's got that reputation. Then he's gonna get Hennigan in there at some point. If he doesn't see it, then Hennigan's going to wind up on the waiver wire, and somebody else is going to really benefit. But remember that name, Seth Hennigan. So that makes Jacksonville very, very interesting. And then there's the most interesting spot, Indy. And Indy's got Daniel Jones, Shane Steichen under a lot of pressure. Daniel Jones was brought in to be the starter, but you also have Anthony Richardson, but he's hurt and doesn't sound like he's going to play anytime in the near future. They also drafted Riley Leonard, who was very popular in state. He played at Notre Dame his final year. And they also have a guy named Jason Bean. So I think this is a really interesting spot, just from the standpoint that if Mac Jones plays well in the preseason, but not well enough to beat out. I'm talking about Mac Jones.
Oh, I see what
if Mac Jones plays well for the Niners in the preseason, but not well enough to beat out Mordecai, I could see Indianapolis saying, hey, trade us Mac Jones. And I could see them cutting or trading Anthony Richardson. And I'll say this. If Tanner Mordecai beats out Mac Jones for the number 2 quarterback job and Indy calls saying, We want Mac Jones. I would trade the Mac Jones for Anthony Richardson. If I were the 49ers, I would take Anthony Richardson and make him my third string developmental guy behind Tanner Mordecai, behind Brock Purdy, and just use the same way Philly, uses, the same way some of these teams have quarterback packages or whatever, goal line packages. The Eagles have made the tush push in vogue. I'm not saying copy the tush push, but what I'm saying is we talked about it at the beginning of the show. The 49ers really struggled in the red zone. What about introducing a package of Anthony Richardson in the red zone? He's 6'3", 245. He runs 4.4. He's an unbelievable athlete. I would put him in the backfield as just a decoy that you might throw it to him and that he might run it in, or you might throw it to him on a lateral and he might throw it in. But Anthony Richardson for Mac Jones would be what I'd be interested in. If Mac Jones looks good, but Mordecai beats him out, if Daniel Jones beats out Richardson and they decide they don't want Richardson and they want to move him on, would you trade Mac Jones for Richardson? I would.
What a scenario you just set up. I was not thinking about the Niners at all when you brought this up, and now it's fascinating. The idea of Anthony Richardson going somewhere, as I mentioned to you earlier, I love him backing up Lamar Jackson. I think that's where Anthony Richardson can see this is the guy I was supposed to be.
Great.
Right? This is the guy I was supposed to be. I am no longer leading a franchise because I couldn't become what he did. What can I wean from exactly what Lamar Jackson does? And remember, Lamar Jackson will admit that the number one thing he wants to improve on is being a leader. And we know that Anthony Richardson clearly was not that, has not been that, is not that in Indy whatsoever. Let me say this for Shane Steichen. Find somebody to figure out how to get what you need out of Anthony Richardson. Somebody get to this guy. Anthony Richardson can be a star in this league, and if you let him become a star somewhere else, you have failed. Unless Anthony Richardson is completely a bust, never to be heard from again in this league, make it happen in Indy. Yes, I root for Steichen. He came from that Eagles Super Bowl team that lost to the Chiefs 2 seasons ago, but this team is close. The Colts have pieces. Jonathan Taylor is still an incredible game-wrecking running back in this league. They've got tons of pieces at wide receiver as well. This offense looks incredible except at the most important position, and yet you have a guy who seemingly has all the pieces and just can't seem to figure it out. I don't like to say that guys are smart or not, but some guys figure out the playbook, etc. Is it an issue that Richardson is not figuring out the playbook, or is it something about leadership? The idea that he pulled himself out of that game the way that he did last season, which was the big linchpin in their season, Larry, that is such a terrible thing to show the rest of the team, that you're taking yourself out of a game because you're tired at that position when we need you coming back in a game the way that they were in a hurry-up offense situation. It was brutal, but if you can speak to him and get through to him on that, can you untap what Anthony Richardson is ready to unleash on this league? There are moments, you've seen it, Larry. You know as a scout, Anthony Richardson would drive you insane. You've seen him throw the ball down the field. He has a beautiful deep ball. He's also got all the intangibles as a physical guy. He can do everything Josh Allen can do theoretically, and yet he can't get through 16 games as the starter when he's been given the franchise with, as I just said, multiple weapons around him. I just want the Colts to figure it out because this is a franchise that drafted Peyton Manning and followed that up with Andrew Luck. This is a team that gets it at quarterback, that understands what it looks like, and yet this guy just can't seem to put the pieces together. It is frustrating just watching as a football fan. I'm not a Colts fan. It is frustrating to watch this guy play because it's all right there.
It's all right there. It's all right there. I mean, that throw that he had in week 1 last year where he stumbled and then he hit a guy in stride like 70 yards down the field. I mean, that was...
He also overthrew his receiver by about 1.5 yards in that same game where they could have beaten Houston week 1. I mean, his best game essentially is that loss to Indy week 1 last year, and it was this close to being a win if he made 2 more plays. And by the way, he never sniffed a game like that again the rest of the season, which is brutal.
Yeah, and I think they're at their end of their rope with him. I really do. I think they're going to go with Daniel Jones. And I don't think Richardson's going to play in the preseason much. I know he's had an injury. There's no indication when he's coming back. They also have Riley Leonard. I really like Riley Leonard, but I'm telling you, Mac Jones, I could see Mac Jones being traded to Indy if he gets beat out by Tanner Mordecai. And I would take Anthony Richardson. I would also take Riley Leonard. I like Riley Leonard. I like his mobility. All right, let's hit the last division. The last division we're going to touch here is in the NFC South. All right.
This is interesting also, this division.
So
it is.
We'll start with Atlanta, where Michael Penix takes over for Kirk Cousins. So that means Kirk Cousins is available. He's probably going to get traded at some point. They also have Easton Stick, who was at North Dakota State, and they have Emory Jones. I think Michael Penix is going to emerge as one of the great quarterbacks in football. I really do. I think he's going to continue to get better and better and better, and the Falcons will be elevated alongside him. And I think the Falcons are the team to watch in that division. And I think Penix is the player to watch in this league. I think if there's one player that you sit there and go, give me somebody who's going to come out of nowhere and just own the freaking league, I'd go with Michael Penix.
And by the way, go back and look at the duel between Penix and Jaden Daniels. It was a Sunday Night Football. I believe it was week 17. And that was the difference between Atlanta going to the playoffs and not. They ended up losing that game to Washington in overtime, but it was a battle. Penix played outstanding in that game. And again, toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels, who we all know is the future in Washington. You're not far off on this, Larry. I just want to say that the room is interesting right now. While Kirk Cousins is still there, I want to give them credit that Atlanta's quarterback room, if that's what we're ranking, you have to like that. You have to like that Cousins is now your backup, right? I mean, you flip how you started last season where Cousins is the starter and Penix is backing out. Now you know what you have in Penix, and you still have Cousins who threw for 500 yards against your division rival. This team swept Tampa last season. I mean, there's something here.
The only addendum I would add to this, and the only reason I don't have Atlanta in my top 5, is that I don't think Cousins is going to be here. I think Cousins will get traded away from here. So it kind of creates a Michael Penix, Easton Stick, Emory Jones room, and then that's a different room. So, but I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. I think Penix is fantastic. Cousins has got to be the best backup quarterback in football, and those young guys, I mean, I'm not an Easton Stick or Emory Jones fan, but they're decent.
And Stick we saw a little with the Chargers as well. Stick had a chance here and there with the Chargers.
I mean, Stick's an athletic guy. He's just small with a small arm. Carolina's got Bryce Young. He's their one. They got a true number 2 in Andy Dalton. And then they got a couple young guys that I don't know much about, Jack Plummer and Ethan, Ethan, what's his last name? Ethan.
Garbers.
Yeah, Garbers. So it's Garbers, Plummer, Andy Dalton, and Bryce Young. Not one of the better rooms, but they do have a defined starter in Bryce Young, who's young but getting better, and they got a really good backup in Dalton, they can win games with, and they can start. So it's a decent room, but I don't love.
I'll give them only the same
credit.
Only the same credit I gave Green Bay. This is the team that won games with both 1 and 2 last season, and those are the same 2 guys coming back this season. So I like to nod that at least from a coaching standpoint, everything else you won with 2 different sort of styles and quarterbacks running things.
Then New Orleans is a wide-open competition. Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner, Hunter Deckers. Shuck has the big stature, 6'5", 225. He throws the best ball. Rattler, though, has movement ability. Hayner's got, some gamer traits. He's won a lot of games, played a lot of football. I got to think this is Tyler Shuck's job just because he's so much the best physically. But Rattler could take it. I think it's, they're going to want to hand it to Shuck. But Rattler, I think, is probably the guy who's going to – if you said to me, who's going to start the most games for the Saints in 2025, and I got to bet everything I have on it, I'm taking Spencer Rattler.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on Rattler. See, Rattler hasn't had we don't have the collection of games with Rattler, and yet they at one point believed that he could be the future. And obviously they weren't expecting to not have Derek Carr here in this mix. And let's just give credit. The last images we have of Kellen Moore is running a Saquon Barkley historic offense in Philadelphia. If we didn't think much of Kellen Moore with the Cowboys or with the Chargers, obviously what you saw in Philadelphia with Sirianni, you have to at least give him credit for understanding what he can get out of a quarterback. This is a fun battle. I agree. if you tell me there's not a QB1 here, this is a great battle. The Shuck Rattler thing is really interesting. And Larry, I really want to hear when you give me the list of quarterbacks that are going to be available. Imagine if one of those two now, not that Shuck, they're not going to get rid of Shuck. He's their first round. He's their draft pick, their top draft pick at quarterback. But Rattler's an interesting name here. If Rattler lost that job, if Rattler's really just somebody's backup here, maybe somebody when they realize they need a starting quarterback, that could be interesting.
So, and then there's Tampa, and Tampa's another team that's right there with Detroit that they can't lose their starter. Baker's the starter, but Kyle Trask, Michael Pratt from Tulane, and Connor Bazelak are the backups. I liked Pratt a little bit at Tulane, but I mean, what a major step down. If Tampa loses Mayfield, Tampa's going to be horrible. Because they're not winning games with Trask or Pratt or Bazelak. I don't buy it.
No, not happening. Not happening.
So there you go. There's your quarterback room. So as far as just taking, now we'll back away for just a second. Where are the quarterback competitions going to come from? Well, it's interesting. The quarterback competition, there could be, to me, it's you're going to have Indy between Daniel Jones, Richardson, Riley Leonard. That's obviously going to be a competition. Cleveland between Flacco and Shador. That's obviously going to be a competition. And then after that, you have New Orleans, where it's going to be Shuck or Rattler or Hainer. So that's going to be a competition. That's pretty much it as far as quarterback competitions. There will not be another quarterback. There's really only 3 as far as quarterback competitions. Maybe you could say 4 if you want to throw the Giants and give Jackson Dart a shot. But it's like basically 3 quarterback competitions. But I see potential for the New York, as far as quarterback rooms that could blow up. New York Giants could blow up. Chicago, in my opinion, could blow up. Tampa, if there's an injury to Baker, blows up. Minnesota could blow up. Seattle could blow up. Jets could blow up. Pittsburgh could blow up. Cleveland, Indy. I think all those teams, that's 9 teams that quarterback position could blow up for them. Absolutely blow up. All right, here's what I'm listing as my top 5 best quarterback rooms, okay? And tell me what you think. I'm going with 1, Philly. Hurts, McKee, McCord, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Howie Roseman, I think, has the best room there. He's got the starter. He's got 2 young future starters in McKee and McCord. And he's got an athletic prospect in Thompson-Robinson. I think Philly's quarterback rooms they're number 1. Okay, they're number 1. Number 2 on my list is Kansas City. Heavy emphasis on Mahomes, but then Minshew gives them a true number 2 that they can win games with. And then they have Bailey Zappi and Chris Oladokun, who are decent, younger developmental prospects. But KC, on the strength of Mahomes and the addition of Minshew, they're number 2. Number 3, I'm going to put Washington as my 3rd team, because to me, you got Jaden Daniels, who's one of the best young quarterbacks in football. You got Mariota, who's also a young quarterback, but comfortable in the number 2 role. You got a real utility guy in Josh Johnson, and you got a prospect in Sam Hartman, who's I think pretty interesting. So I like Washington as the 3rd best quarterback room. I have the Niners as the 4th best quarterback room because you got an established guy in Purdy. You got a true number 2 in Jones, and I like Tanner Mordecai, and I think Curtis Rourke has got a lot of potential. So I think the Niners have 4 useful quarterbacks there. I have them as the 4th best quarterback room. And then I have Cincinnati as the 5th best quarterback room. You start with Burrow, and then Jake Browning has proven that he can play as a backup. He's a NorCal guy from Folsom. And then you got Peyton Thorne and Logan Woodside as your 3rd string guys, and I like Thorne's athleticism. So those are my top 5 quarterback rooms. Philly 1, KC 2, Washington 3, Niners 4, Cincinnati 5.
I'll give you my 5 real quick.
Yeah,
and
give me your
part of
5.
this part of this is maybe more from intriguing. All right, this might be something I want to watch more than it is
Sure.
necessarily I'd want to own, okay, or want to be part of managing, but this would be the most interesting to watch, and then a little bit of obviously the talent. I'm going to just say Chiefs number 1. I love putting Mahomes at the top of every list that you possibly can, and for those that forget, you got the best quarterback in football, your room's pretty solid, right? And it's not as if he's missed a ton of games to this point in his career. So I like that, and as you said, Reed went out and got a significant starter in Minshew, who we know can keep them afloat, and we know there's plenty around them that they'll be okay. Then I'm going to go with Giants are just interesting, right? I mean, if I'm just talking to quarterbacks, that's a room that's got a lot of people I want to talk to with great stories. DeVito's got stories. We know Russell Wilson and Jameis as well. And then they went out and stole Jackson Dart from the Rams on draft day. I love that move. I love that room. The Browns, of course, if we're doing a TV show about quarterbacks, that's fascinating. I mean, the sprinkle in a Deshaun Watson storyline here and there, and then you got Flacco, Shedeur Sanders, the number 1 story from the draft. You also drafted a guy ahead of Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, and then Kenny Pickett. Frank technically won the Super Bowl last season, so all right, that's adorable there. I think that's really cool. The Titans, I like what you don't like about the Levis and Cam Ward thing. Will Levis is saying, wait a second, didn't you give me the keys to the car and now someone else is driving? Maybe that motivates him. Maybe is there a more motivated backup quarterback in the league who's ready to prove to the rest of the league that I was drafted here for a reason? So I like that you've got the guy you're saying is it right now and the guy you said was it 2 seasons ago. That's fun and interesting to me. The Colts is intriguing. I already said what I said about Anthony Richardson. I just love what he can be. And the fact that they went out and got the quarterback that maybe you could argue the league said in unison, not worth the money, Daniel Jones. That's now the guy that's going to take your job. Anthony Richardson, if that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. And the fact that Daniel Jones could now beat somebody out for a job is just hilarious. So I'd love to see what happens there. And right behind it, I'll just honorable mention, I already said it, the Falcons. With Kirk Cousins still there, you said it. It's the best backup. They have the best backup in the league right now, technically. So that's that.
All right, let's hit our super, but first, let's thank Claudaddy Arcades. So they've got 3 locations in Southern California, plus spots in Fresno, Modesto. They got brand new locations coming. Claudaddy Arcades is bringing family-friendly fun to communities across California. They got a brand new arcade opening in Capitola Mall down in the South Bay this summer. Also, another brand new arcade opening in Visalia Mall in the Central Valley. They're a great follow on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades to find a location near you. Thanks to Claudaddy Arcades for being a sponsor of the Krug Show. Once again, he's a great follow on IG at Claw_Daddy_Arcades to find a location near you. Thanks to Claudaddy Arcades for sponsoring the Krug Show. One super from Corey Patterson. He says, Jimmy G, top 32. No. That's why he's the backup. He's the backup for a reason. All right, so we come to the end of this video. And now I'm going to give you the 12 quarterbacks that I'm going to keep my eye on this summer. You say, why? What are you keeping your eye on? Well, I'm always thinking 49er-centric, right? So I'm thinking there's a very good chance. Brock Purdy's going to be the guy. He's going to have a very good year. He looks great. I mean, he looks really, really good. The best I've ever seen him look. This spring. He looks fantastic. He looks strong. He's healthy. He's happy. The ball's coming out with velocity, with accuracy. He looks really, really good. So he's your number 1. And Curtis Rourke played last year with a torn ACL. They're going to get him right. He's going to have surgery if he hasn't already had it. He's going to be number 4. So it really is the Niners quarterback thing. It's Tanner Mordecai or Mac Jones. And it's on paper set up for Mac Jones. So the most likely scenario is the Niners quarterback room is Purdy's your 1, Jones is your 2, Tanner Mordecai's the 3, and Curtis Rourke is on the PUP or NFI list for the year, and then next summer he's competing for a roster spot. I think that's probably the way it shakes out. But as I stated at the start, if Mordecai, who's got more experience, more arm strength, and more athleticism, if he has a better summer than Mac Jones and badly outplays him and takes the job away, I think the 49ers, who are hugged up against the 49ers have a lot of cap room, but the 49ers are always very hugged up against the cap because of how much talent they have in their roster. I don't think they're going with a $5 million third-string quarterback in Mac Jones. I think in that scenario, Mac Jones will be dealt to one of these other teams And the 49ers will be looking for a third quarterback to add to their roster. Here are the 12 quarterbacks that I will be watching this summer to see if any of them shake out. And I could probably actually share the screen. You guys could just see it. There we go. I'll do that. I'll share the screen, and you guys can take that down.
And I want to remind everyone, this is something that Larry, as a scout, could have been given this assignment. A decade ago, Larry, 2 decades ago, this could have been your assignment. Go get us the 12 names. And here it is. This is what you would have turned in to the general manager, to the player personnel director right here.
If John Lynch comes up to me and says, hey, if Tanner Mordecai beats out Mac Jones and the Colts come knocking for Mac Jones to be, the backup to Daniel Jones, or the Lions come knocking and say, hey, we'd like Mac Jones to back up Jared Goff, and we'll make Hendon Hooker our third quarterback. A team comes calling for Mac Jones, and you don't want to have him because he's a $5 million third-string quarterback, and you could move him and make Tanner Mordecai your number 2. Okay, great. What other quarterback then fills out your roster? These are the guys that I'd be looking for. Carter Bradley. That is Gus Bradley's son. Gus Bradley's now coaching with the Niners. Carter Bradley's got a good arm. He's got good size. He played at South Alabama. He's got good arm strength. He has got an NFL caliber arm for sure. If the Niners are looking for a third quarterback, Carter Bradley could easily be on their list. Seth Hennigan, Jacksonville. He was great at Memphis. He's really, really smart. John Gruden said it in the quarterback school. He's like, Seth Hennigan has a photographic memory. Watching him go through the Gruden variables one after another showed how incredibly smart he is. He's also really clutch, and he's kind of underrated. And he's playing in a bad organization for Jacksonville, where the starting job is going to Trevor Lawrence, and they could easily wind up cutting Seth Hennigan. And if so, Seth Hennigan would be a phenomenal 49er. 2 Colts, Anthony Richardson and Riley Leonard. This would be, if Mac Jones gets outplayed and Indy wants him, I would offer him to the Colts for Anthony Richardson or Riley Leonard. And Richardson obviously is a phenomenal athlete. Riley Leonard is also a very good athlete. Richardson's got a big arm. Riley Leonard's got lesser of an arm, but Leonard really is a winner. Richardson is a developmental player based on traits, but I'd be interested in either one of those guys. Brady Cook, Jets. The Jets and Adrian Martinez, Jets. One of these guys is going to get cut, and both those guys are pretty damn good quarterbacks. Martinez was really good at Nebraska. Brady Cook's a winner. I mean, I saw some interviews on YouTube of Missouri receivers talking about Brady Cook. I mean, they hold him in the highest regard. It was like he's like a Hall of Famer. I mean, it's amazing. And he's got great speed. He's kind of a gamer. Really like Brady Cook. This guy's not even on anybody's roster, but the other day I saw Brock Purdy and George Kittle working out in Nashville with C.J. Beathard. Well, don't think for a second that the 49ers couldn't hire C.J. Beathard. You make Purdy your 1, you make Mordecai the 2, you trade Mac Jones, and you call up C.J. Beathard and say, hey, C.J., you want to be number 3? It would be very popular with Kittle. It would be a very popular move with Purdy. I could see the Niners doing that. Dorian Thompson-Robinson with the Eagles. The Niners showed a lot of interest in DTR coming out of UCLA. He's got mobility. He's got gamesmanship. He knows where to go with the football. He's played a ton of football. This guy played 6 years of college ball. This guy's very, very experienced. Now he's gonna be the man on the outside looking in Philly, but he's not a slouch. DTR can play, and he would be a nice third quarterback for the 49ers. Commanders have Sam Hartman. The Bears have Austin Reed. I told you that I love Taylor Elgersma from the Packers, from Laurier, 6'6", with a gun. Max Brosmer, a lot of people feel like he's a great fit for the Shanahan offense. He may wind up getting cut in a numbers game in Minnesota. So there you go. You got let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, you got 12 quarterbacks. A dozen quarterbacks who could be available in August for the Niners. Carter Bradley, Seth Hennigan, Anthony Richardson, Riley Leonard, Brady Cook, Adrian Martinez, C.J. Beathard, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Sam Hartman, Austin Reed, Taylor Elgersma, and Max Brosmer.
Larry, can I make it a baker's dozen? I want to throw somebody at you who Niners
Sure,
fans
please.
should remember. And I will admit that I've been watching a lot of retro videos about the 2017 Super Bowl run by the Philadelphia Eagles. But
Nick
a guy the
Foles?
Niners, nope, that's great. That's a good one and fun. And he was in the league not so long ago and actually started for the Colts, I believe, 2 seasons ago. But how about this? Carson Wentz last second beat the Niners on the final week of the season 2 seasons ago. I'm sure you remember that, 21-20.
I was there.
Yeah, okay, so you remember that game well, right? Wentz played very well.
Beat Sam Darnold.
He beat Darnold in that game, the Battle of the Backups for Week 18, but Wentz played very well in a comeback victory, 21-20, against the Niners on that day where they were resting Stafford, and obviously the Niners as well had nothing to play for that particular day. So Wentz in that game, and then where was Wentz last season? The other quarterback sleepaway camp that people go
Kansas
to.
City,
right? It's not always exactly. It's not always San Francisco. Everyone says, "Oh, Darnold went to the sleepaway camp with Kyle Shanahan and got better just by osmosis," right? It also happens in Kansas City. That's where Nick Foles had gone before he had his resurgence and the Super Bowl run for the Eagles. He had spent 1 season with Kansas City before Howie Roseman and the Eagles brought him back as the backup to Wentz, and then we know how that turned out. But Wentz spent last season hanging out with Mahomes and Andy Reid. Wentz, we went through all 32 teams today. There's not a quarterback room that right now has Carson Wentz.
Why
could
is
see that.
Is he hurt?
I don't know. I don't understand why. He was there in KC last season. He actually ended up with just for a moment. He came into a game. I remember there was a scare with Mahomes. He came out. Wentz came in, and that was it. And then they took him out. I think it was in the Tampa game, I believe.
This guy was in the MVP conversation not that long ago.
Exactly. You can't tell me that Kyle Shanahan couldn't squeeze something out of Carson
He
Wentz.
likes him.
And he feels like the kind of guy, not just, it keeps it afloat. Carson Wentz could lead a resurgence. I can see him on that list as being a guy who wouldn't just save your season for a couple of weeks. Maybe, ironically, he pulls the Nick Foles for somebody and becomes the guy coming in late to lead a Super Bowl run.
I love it. I think that's a great name. That's a That's a good idea, too. Mitchell and Ness drops his comment. He says, Mac Jones barely even learned the playbook, and Larry's been pushing to trade him all this time before training camp. It's not that I'm fine. I'm fine with Mac Jones being on the team. I would be totally fine with it. I'm just looking at this depth chart going, wait a second. I just watched practice the last couple weeks. I was there. Tanner Mordecai played quite a bit better in those practices than Mac Jones. Now, you could argue he should, right? He's been in this offense longer. But there's no, Mordecai's got much better arm strength, much better foot speed, and knows the offense better. So I would say that the odds of him outplaying Mac Jones this summer, pretty good. Now, he's going to have to, I'll fully acknowledge, you would think, well, they're going to pay Mac Jones $5 million. They're going to pay Mordecai whatever they're going to pay him. What difference does it make to them if Mordecai's the 2 and Mac's the 3, or Mac's the 2 and Mordecai's the 3? The money's the same. No, I get that. But the Niners have shown in the past that they didn't want to keep Trey Lance at $9 million to be the number 3. And I don't think they're going to want to keep Mac necessarily at $5 million if he's the number 3. So, and I don't think Mac, that's the other thing is, I don't think Mac right now is saying all the right things because he's the number 2. If he loses to Tanner Mordecai, he's going to say, get me the hell out of here. I am not going to sit behind Tanner Mordecai. I kind of believe that. So I think Mordecai's got I would say at least a 50-50 chance of beating out Mac Jones. And that means that even though nobody's talking about it, that Mac Jones could be elsewhere. And that's why I have these 12 guys on the screen, because I think one of these 12 guys could wind up being the Niners' third-string quarterback, and then Sammy threw in Carson Wentz. And I think that's a good one. I really do. I think that's a very good name. So anyway, that's just the breakdown of our quarterbacks around the league. We talk NFL every Monday. Today's a Tuesday, but I was doing KMBR yesterday and I couldn't do this. But yeah, we'll do more. We'll do next Monday we'll be back for more. But Sammy, I think good exercise today. I think a couple things really showed themselves. One is that if you look closely, you have somewhere between 5 and 10 quarterback rooms that could blow up this year. We mentioned Pittsburgh, but I think Seattle, Milroe, I think is the better starter, a better player, yet he's not the starter right now. Detroit and Tampa could blow up on injuries to the starter. Cleveland's a circus. Chicago, I'm not a believer there. There's a lot of pressure there. Jackson Dart is pushing in New York, and there's a lot of pressure on the Giants regime to win. So there's somewhere between 5 and 10 quarterback rooms that absolutely could just blow up, and it could look a whole lot different. Which I may do a video on that, but overall, I think this shows us that, man, the Eagles are really fortified. The Eagles are really, really fortified because they're one of the only teams. I mean, the Niners, if Curtis Rourke can play, might be another, but the Eagles are one of the only teams that has a legitimate starting quarterback that's accomplished, who's not old, and a future starting quarterback or more. They might have 2 future starting quarterbacks on the roster. So I think Philly, Howie Roseman, hate to say it because he seems kind of annoying. He seems kind of full of himself. But you got to give Howie his, man. He has put together, in a league where your quarterback means the most, he's put together not just the best team in football, he's got the best quarterback room in football.
Quarterback room, I want to remind everyone, especially the Niners fans, had we done this practice 3 seasons ago, remember the guy that nobody would have been talking about is now making $50 million. Brock Purdy, we would have been talking about quarterback room. I don't know where we would have had the Niners rated in that year when we were coming in, but Purdy would not have been on the radar. That's what's incredible about going through this list. Brock Purdy is making $50 million and played in overtime in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, anything is possible.
Yeah. Ram Faithful 39 says, and you're shocked Tanner Mordecai has looked better? Mac Jones has been outplayed everywhere. I hear you, but, you're still talking about a guy who was a first-round pick, 15th overall. A couple years later, he should know quite a bit about football. He played at Alabama, and yet I think there's a better than 50-50 chance, or at least a 50-50 chance that Mordecai outplays him. All right, that is going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Claw Daddy Arcades. They're a great follow on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades. They got a brand new location opening in Capitola Mall and Visalia Mall later on this summer. Check out Claw Daddy Arcades, and thanks to them for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. Everybody hit like and subscribe over here. Sammy's channel is there as well. Everybody hit like and subscribe to Sam's channel and help Sam build that thing into a monster. And please, Sammy, I'll give you the final word as we sign off on this Tuesday.
Thank you much, Larry. At Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam, find us there. You can get the podcast Thinking Out Loud with Andrew Siciliano, who you remember from NFL Network, and, of course, Red Zone. Andrew Siciliano and I, the podcast Thinking Out Loud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Larry, thank you for this. This was incredible to jump into the scouting room, and I didn't have to say it. You said the Eagles room is screaming at number 1. That's huge. Coming into, off a Super Bowl, oftentimes you like to take a crack at it, but yes, they rebuilt quickly and have something special yet again.
Yep. Philly and Washington are right there with the Niners. In fact, the Niners, you could make the argument the Niners are there with them. I don't know if they are, but as far as the contenders in the NFC, you start at quarterback. And you look at the rooms and you say, well, Philly, damn good. Washington, damn good. Those are teams to really watch out for. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Sam. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.